The airport was buzzing with the usual chaos: rolling suitcases, hurried announcements over the PA, and the low hum of engines from nearby runways. Travelers scurried toward gates, their faces a mixture of excitement, impatience, and exhaustion. But amid the crowd, a small figure moved with deliberate determination. A little girl, no more than 7, stepped lightly on the polished tiles, her small hand gripping a leash. At the other end of that leash stood a massive German shepherd, fur glinting under the overhead lights like polished mahogany. The dog's dark eyes scanned the crowd carefully, intelligent and calm, unbothered by the bustle around him. The girl adjusted her backpack and whispered softly, "Easy, Max." The German shepherd, Max, responded with a slight wag of his tail but kept pace perfectly, matching her stride step for step. Passengers noticed them immediately. Some stopped to stare, others pulled out their phones, capturing a scene they couldn't ignore. A little girl walking fearlessly through an airport with a dog that could have been mistaken for a service animal, a police K9, or a wolf from some wild storybook. Yet, despite Max's size and intensity, there was something undeniably gentle in the way he stayed close to her. As they approached the gate, the girl paused briefly. She glanced up at the departure board, eyes scanning the rows of flight information with practiced focus. She was clearly familiar with the routine, moving with a quiet confidence that belied her young age. Behind her, Max sat obediently, head slightly tilted, ears perked. The hum of chatter and the clatter of luggage around them seemed to fade, as if the world had momentarily shifted its attention onto the two of them. When they reached the boarding gate, the pilot emerged from the cockpit doorway, clipboard in hand. At first glance, he looked the picture of calm professionalism. But as his eyes settled on the little girl and the massive dog beside her, something changed. His jaw tightened, and the lines in his forehead deepened. The clipboard trembled slightly in his hands as he stepped closer, clearing his throat. "I'm sorry," he said sharply, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. "That animal can't fly." The girl looked up at him, confusion flickering across her face. He has to," she whispered, her small voice barely audible over the gate announcements. The pilot's eyes narrowed. "I don't care. Rules are rules. No exceptions. That dog either leaves or you both do." His words were like a hammer dropping into the cabin's tense air. Passengers nearby began to murmur. A woman clutched her child's hand, unsure whether to intervene or stay silent. A businessman frowned, his phone forgotten in his pocket, watching the interaction unfold. The tension in the room grew thick, like fog settling over the gate area. The little girl didn't cry, she didn't scream. She simply shook her head, tiny fists gripping Max's leash tighter. He's coming with me," she said. Her voice wavered, but there was a fierce determination underlying it, a courage that seemed far beyond her years. The German shepherd shifted slightly, seating himself between the girl and the pilot as if anticipating confrontation. But there was no aggression in his posture, only readiness. The pilot's eyes scanned the dog's massive frame, lingering on the disciplined posture and calm demeanor. He frowned, taken aback by the quiet intensity radiating from the animal. A flight attendant, previously distracted by boarding procedures, froze in her tracks. Her gaze moved from the pilot to the girl and back again. "Sir," she began, voice trembling slightly, "maybe we should." "No," the pilot cut her off, his tone final. "This is my decision." He stepped closer, the heel of his polished shoe clicking against the tile. "Either the dog gets off now or you do." The girl swallowed hard. She could feel Max's presence beside her, grounding her. She didn't look away. "He can't leave," she said softly, almost pleading. He saved me." The pilot blinked, taken aback by the unexpected answer. "Saved you," he repeated. The cabin seemed to collectively hold its breath. "During the fire," the girl continued, her small chest rising and falling rapidly as she spoke. "He pulled me out. He kept me alive." Her words were barely above a whisper, but the conviction behind them carried through the room. Passengers stopped moving. Phones were raised cautiously, capturing the moment. The murmurs turned into whispers of disbelief. "A rescue dog," one woman breathed. "No way is that real." The pilot's frown deepened. He looked at the German shepherd again, really looked this time. The dog's eyes were fixed on the girl, unwavering, intelligent. There was an aura of authority, a calm confidence that seemed almost human. The pilot's lips pressed into a thin line as he considered the claim. Max shifted slightly, sitting upright, ears forward, tail resting quietly on the floor. The subtle movements were precise, trained, deliberate. It was clear to anyone watching that this was no ordinary pet. A man across the aisle, a retired firefighter judging by his uniform insignia, leaned toward the flight attendant. "That dog," he muttered, "is better trained than half the people I've ever worked with." The pilot's eyes narrowed, but for the first time there was hesitation. He glanced down at the little girl, her small figure framed by the giant animal beside her. Her eyes met his, unwavering, filled with a mix of fear, determination, and trust. And in that instant, the pilot realized this was no ordinary boarding dispute. Before he could speak, the little girl leaned slightly closer to Max, whispering something that made even the hardened flight attendant stop in her tracks. The entire gate area seemed to pause, waiting. "He's my hero," she said softly. "He keeps me safe." The words hung in the air, fragile yet powerful. The pilot's jaw tightened. The murmurs in the cabin grew louder. People were now openly staring, phones recording, whispers spreading like wildfire. And just as the pilot opened his mouth to assert his authority once again, Max shifted his gaze, not at the pilot, not at the passengers, but toward the security checkpoint at the end of the gate. His body tensed ever so slightly, ears flicking back. The little girl noticed the change immediately. Her hand gripped Max's leash tighter. Her breath caught. Something had happened, or was about to happen, that no one yet understood. The pilot, sensing the shift, straightened and squared his shoulders. "Step aside," he commanded, voice sharper than before. But the German shepherd didn't move. The little girl's eyes were locked on something far beyond the pilot's control, and in that frozen moment, the entire cabin seemed to recognize. Whatever was about to unfold, it would change everything. A hush fell over the gate. Passengers leaned forward, their curiosity and anxiety intertwined. No one knew what the next second would bring, but everyone knew they were about to witness something extraordinary. And then the pilot's next words, delivered with a mix of authority and uncertainty, finally broke the silence. "You can't take that dog on this plane." The little girl's eyes didn't waver. Max remained poised, his gaze unwavering, calm yet alert. The air in the cabin was thick with tension. Every passenger felt it. Something was about to happen that no policy, no rulebook, and no airline protocol could prepare them for. And that's when she whispered two words that would leave everyone in the terminal and soon the world on the edge of their seats. The little girl's words, barely audible, yet heavy with meaning, hung in the air. The pilot's eyes narrowed. "Saved you," he repeated, disbelief lacing every syllable. Around them, the gate erupted into murmurs. Some passengers leaned forward, phones poised like journalists, capturing the confrontation. Others exchanged incredulous looks, their expressions asking silently, how could a child and a dog be at the center of this chaos? The girl swallowed and met the pilot's gaze squarely. "Yes, during the fire he pulled me out. He saved my life." The German shepherd, Max, shifted slightly, sitting upright and alert beside her, as if emphasizing her words. His powerful frame seemed almost like a protective shield. The pilot's initial irritation wavered. There was something in the dog's posture that made him pause, but policy, rigid and unyielding, still anchored his decisions. "That doesn't change the rules," the pilot said, voice tight, yet betraying a flicker of uncertainty. "This is not a pet flight. This is not a service animal flight. I won't risk my passengers, no exceptions." The little girl's fingers dug into Max's fur. "He isn't just a pet. He's trained. He can help. He's a hero." Her voice trembled, but her eyes, fierce and unwavering, held the room captive. Passengers leaned closer. A man in a business suit muttered under his breath, "This kid's telling the truth." Another, a young mother, whispered, "He looks like one of those search and rescue dogs from TV or real disasters." The flight attendant, torn between following the pilot's orders and protecting the child, knelt beside the girl. Her hands trembled slightly as she said, "Sir, maybe there's a way to—" "No," the pilot snapped, sharper than intended. "Step aside. I decide who boards this plane." Max's ears flicked back, catching the pilot's tension. The dog's posture stiffened, not aggressive but alert, protective, aware. He let out a single, controlled exhale through his nose, the kind that seemed to communicate, "I'm ready." The girl's small hand tightened around his leash. "He can't leave," she said again, voice stronger this time, as if feeding off Max's calm determination. He saved me. He has to stay." The pilot looked at the girl, then at the dog, then back at her. For a brief moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His rigid authority, his weapon against chaos, suddenly felt fragile, like it might crack at any second. A retired firefighter seated a few rows away stood up. His voice, calm but commanding, cut through the tension. "Sir," he said, "that dog's trained, you can see it. Look at the way he's sitting, calm, controlled, waiting for a command. That's not a pet, that's a professional K9. The pilot's jaw tightened. He had flown planes for over a decade, seen security threats, panic, and chaos. But this was different. A 7-year-old child, a massive dog, and the weight of a life-threatening story all balanced precariously in the aisle of his plane. He swallowed, trying to regain composure. "What's his training?" he asked cautiously, though it sounded more like a challenge than a question. The girl hesitated, then slowly lifted her sleeve, revealing burned scars along her forearm. She swallowed hard. He pulled me from the fire, from under the house. She stopped, her voice trembling. "He saved me." Gasps echoed through the cabin. The murmurs grew louder. Phones clicked on, videos recorded, whispers spread. "Oh my God, he's a rescue dog," one woman whispered. "He really saved her." The pilot glanced at Max. The dog's ears were forward, alert, his gaze steady. He wasn't a threat, but he wasn't ordinary either. The badge on his vest glinted faintly in the cabin lights. K9 Search and Rescue, California Wildfire Response. The pilot's heartbeat quickened. That patch wasn't just decoration, it was real. This dog had seen disasters. He had been trained for life-and-death scenarios. And now, he was standing between a pilot and a terrified little girl, ready for whatever came next. Max shifted slightly, seating himself squarely in front of her, blocking any potential confrontation. The dog's posture radiated authority and purpose. The pilot's rigid confidence wavered. For the first time, he questioned, what if this dog wasn't just a passenger? What if the girl wasn't exaggerating? The girl whispered again, this time louder, her voice carrying through the tense cabin. "He saved my life. He's my hero. He keeps me safe." The flight attendant's eyes softened. She glanced around at the other passengers, faces filled with curiosity, empathy, even admiration. The cabin's energy had shifted. No one saw a problem child or a disruptive dog. They saw bravery, trust, and a bond forged in fire and fear. But the pilot wasn't ready to yield. "Rules are rules," he barked, trying to regain authority, "no matter how heroic." Max tilted his head slightly, ears forward, his gaze unwavering. It wasn't just obedience, it was understanding. The dog knew the stakes. He sensed the pilot's hesitation, the girl's fear, the passenger's attention. And in that moment he became more than an animal, he became a guardian, a silent enforcer of truth. The girl took a deep breath. "Please," she said, her voice small but firm. "He can come, he has to." A few passengers whispered encouragement. "Let her stay. Look at him, he's a hero." The pilot stepped back slightly, his eyes darting around the cabin. The murmurs had grown into a low buzz of support. Passengers were now openly taking sides. The little girl and Max had the room's sympathy and possibly its protection. Then, without warning, Max rose to his full height. He moved a single step forward, his powerful body calm but alert. His head turned slightly toward the back of the plane, ears flicked to the side, nostrils flaring faintly. The little girl stiffened. "Max," she whispered. The dog responded with a subtle nod of his head, as if confirming a silent communication only they understood. The pilot froze, noticing the subtle shift in the dog's demeanor. This wasn't just bravery or obedience. This was instinct, alert, protective, focused. A few passengers gasped. A woman whispered, "He knows something." The flight attendant knelt closer to the girl. "Sir," she said quietly, trying not to alarm the passengers, "that's trained alert behavior. He's detecting something." The pilot's knuckles whitened as he gripped his clipboard. For the first time in years, he felt uncertainty grip him. The rules he had relied on so heavily suddenly seemed inadequate. He looked at the little girl, her eyes wide but unafraid, her fingers lightly brushing Max's fur, and he realized the truth. This was no ordinary flight. No ordinary child. No ordinary dog. The cabin fell into a tense silence. Every passenger felt it, the air thick with anticipation, every heartbeat echoing the unspoken question, "What will happen next?" The girl's whisper cut through the silence, almost lost amid the hum of the terminal. "He knows something's wrong." Max's body tensed. The dog's gaze darted to the security checkpoint, then back to the pilot, then down the aisle. Every muscle coiled, ready. The pilot's lips pressed into a thin line. He tried to mask it, but a flicker of fear passed over his face. For the first time, the authority he wielded felt fragile. The weight of responsibility and the unknown pressed down on him like a physical force. The little girl's hand tightened around Max's leash. "Please, you have to let him stay," she said softly, voice quivering but resolute. And in that tense, frozen moment, the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next action, the next word, the next signal that would determine what happened on this flight. The pilot opened his mouth, but the sound of the German shepherd's low, controlled bark stopped him cold. His eyes followed the dog's gaze down the aisle, and that's when he saw it, a shadowy movement near the luggage bin at the back of the plane. Every passenger leaned forward instinctively, every eye turned. Max had just begun to move purposefully toward something no one yet understood. And in that instant, the gate erupted in stunned silence. Max's gaze was locked on the back of the plane, unblinking and precise. The massive German shepherd moved with calculated steps, muscles rippling under his sleek coat. Each passenger in the cabin held their breath. Phones hovered mid-recording. A tense hush fell over the room, punctuated only by the distant hum of the engines and the soft shuffle of nervous feet. The little girl's hand tightened on Max's leash. Her small voice trembled as she whispered, "Max, what is it?" The dog stopped abruptly near the last row, sitting with military-like precision, ears forward, nose twitching as he sniffed the air. The passengers exchanged uneasy glances, their eyes darting from the girl to the dog and then toward the back of the plane. Nobody moved, everyone sensing the charged atmosphere, the kind of tension that precedes a storm. A flight attendant leaned closer, her whisper urgent, "Sir, he's alerting. Something's not right." The pilot's face was a mixture of disbelief and concern. He had dealt with emergencies before, mechanical failures, medical crises, but never a child and a dog acting as co-pilots in real-time threat detection. He swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Max's nostrils flared as he sniffed the floor near the last row. His eyes darted to a passenger seat, then to the overhead bin. The subtle movements were barely perceptible, but the trained eye could see the intensity in his focus. He was no longer simply protective. He was working, scanning, analyzing, preparing for action. The little girl whispered. He's sensing it. He knows something bad is hiding there. Passengers began to lean closer. Murmurs rose like a tide, hushed but persistent. What is it? One woman asked nervously. A bomb, something dangerous. The pilot straightened, voice firmer than before, though tension still laced every word. Everybody remain calm. I'll handle this. He approached the last row, his polished shoes clicking against the cabin floor. Max rose to his full height, positioning himself directly between the pilot and the suspicious bin. His stance was protective, commanding, immovable. Don't, the little girl said sharply, tugging gently on his leash. He's trained, he'll know what to do. The flight attendant glanced at the pilot, her expression pleading. Please, just watch, don't interfere. The pilot hesitated, blinking as he took in the scene. Max was not acting randomly. Every movement, every sniff, every subtle twitch signaled purpose. This was a trained K9 in full alert mode, and the child's words, simple and earnest, confirmed what passengers already suspected. This dog had saved a life before and could do it again. Okay, the pilot muttered under his breath. We'll see what he's found. Max moved again, silently, decisively, circling the suspicious overhead bin. The dog's gaze fixed on the bag stashed beneath the rose seat, a black duffel, nondescript but emanating something unusual. A faint odor lingered in the cabin, barely perceptible, yet Max's trained nose had detected it instantly. The little girl's fingers gripped the leash tightly, her knuckles white. He's right, she whispered. Something's wrong. The pilot's heart pounded as he peered at the bag. Nothing looked outwardly suspicious, but instinct, reinforced by Max's extraordinary behavior, told him otherwise. He glanced around the cabin. Every passenger was silent, waiting, watching, entranced by the unfolding scene. Some hid their phones, unsure whether to record or step back. Others simply held their breath. A man in a firefighter jacket from the previous row muttered, "That dog isn't guessing. He's detecting. Trust him." The pilot swallowed hard. Years of rigid rules and standard operating procedures collided with the raw reality before him. A 7-year-old girl, scarred but brave, accompanied by a German shepherd trained for life-and-death situations, was warning him about an imminent threat he couldn't yet see. The dog barked once, short, sharp, commanding attention. The sound reverberated through the cabin. Instantly, every head turned. Max's posture was taut, every muscle coiled, his gaze unbreakable. The air crackled with tension. The little girl whispered, "He's telling us to stop. Don't touch it." The pilot froze, realizing the gravity of the moment. His hand hovered over the seatback as he debated, should he open the bin, investigate the bag, or trust the dog's instincts. Max's ears flicked again. He sat perfectly still, as if calculating the next move. The little girl's voice, soft but resolute, filled the tense space. "He's going to show us. Just wait." The pilot's pulse quickened. Sweat formed along his hairline. He had to make a decision fast. One wrong move could put the plane, passengers, and himself at risk. Yet he also felt the growing realization, ignoring Max could be worse. Suddenly the dog lunged, swift, controlled, and precise, toward the bag, not in aggression but in alert mode. He barked, a single commanding bark, then nudged the bag with his snout. The sound of the bark was like a trigger. Passengers gasped. The little girl's eyes widened. "He's found it." The pilot instinctively stepped back, hands raised. "Everyone stay calm," he shouted, though his voice trembled. "Do not move, do not touch it." Max circled the bin, sniffing intently. His tail was rigid, eyes fixed, ears forward. The cabin was frozen in collective fear, awe, and disbelief. Every passenger felt the energy, the weight of the unknown pressing down like a storm. The little girl knelt slightly beside Max, whispering reassurances, her small hands brushing his fur. "Good boy, find it, show us." A flight attendant carefully stepped forward, pointing toward the bin. "Sir," she said quietly, "he's trying to indicate something dangerous." The pilot's mind raced. Every training, every protocol screamed at him to be in control. Yet Max, guided by instinct and years of disaster response training, was now directing the situation. He had no choice but to follow the cues. The dog barked again, short, firm, and pawed at the bag. The sound jolted the passengers. One woman gasped, her hand over her mouth. "Oh my God, he's alerting on a threat." The pilot took a slow breath, then turned to the little girl. What is it?" he asked, voice low, wary. The girl shook her head slightly. "I don't know," she whispered. "He won't lie, he's telling us it's dangerous." Max growled, a low, controlled warning, not aggressive but unmistakably serious. The pilot's stomach churned. His rational mind clashed with the raw instinct in front of him. Every protocol, every policy, every rule seemed suddenly inadequate. The cabin was tense beyond measure. No one dared move. Every phone was raised, every eye fixed. The moment stretched, a taut string ready to snap. Then Max nudged the bag with a snout again, insistent, purposeful. He barked a final, commanding bark, then sat, eyes locked on the pilot. The little girl whispered again. "He wants you to see it, but carefully. He's telling us not to touch it first." The pilot swallowed hard. He glanced around the cabin. Faces reflected fear, awe, and trust. He realized the truth. This dog, this girl, had just shifted the balance of control entirely. And at that moment, the unthinkable happened. A faint hissing sound began to escape from the bag, almost imperceptible, but enough to send a shiver through the cabin. Passengers froze. The little girl's grip tightened on Max's leash. Even the pilot stepped back instinctively. Max's ears twitched. His body tensed. The dog had detected something the humans could not yet comprehend. And that's when the first trace of smoke curled from the bag zipper. The cabin erupted into stunned silence. Everyone realized simultaneously that this was no ordinary luggage, no ordinary threat. The German Shepherd had just stopped a potential disaster mid-flight. The faint curl of smoke from the black duffel bag at the back of the plane sent a ripple of fear through the cabin. Passengers froze mid-breath, eyes wide, jaws clenched. The hum of engines felt distant, replaced by the thundering heartbeat of everyone in the room. The little girl held Max's leash tight, her knuckles pale, but she did not let go. She knew he could handle this. The pilot took a cautious step back, sweat forming along his hairline. His mind raced. Security protocols, rules, and standard operating procedures all screamed in his ear, but they were useless here. All of them, passengers and crew alike, were frozen under the weight of uncertainty. And then he noticed it, a small patch on Max's harness, faint but unmistakable. K9 Search and Rescue, California Wildfire Response. The words were faded, embroidered into the fabric, but visible enough for anyone who looked closely. The pilot's eyes widened. His earlier irritation and rigid authority evaporated instantly, replaced by a dawning recognition. This was no ordinary dog. This was trained, experienced, a hero. Passengers murmured quietly among themselves. Some whispered, "Search and rescue, that explains it." Others simply stared, unable to process the surreal scene before them. A massive German Shepherd calmly, almost imperceptibly, alerting to a potential threat, guided by a child. The little girl's voice trembled but was steady. "He's trained to detect danger. He saved me before, he'll do it again." The pilot's gaze flicked from the patch to the dog, whose dark, intelligent eyes met his own. Max was calm, poised, but alert, ready to act at a moment's notice. He was not a threat, he was the answer. The flight attendant, kneeling beside the girl, whispered urgently to the pilot, "Sir, he's a disaster response K9. He's been trained for situations like this. He won't be wrong." The pilot swallowed hard, his throat dry. He had flown through storms, handled onboard medical emergencies, and faced technical failures. But nothing had prepared him for this. The combination of raw human courage, canine instinct, and the invisible threat now curling smoke into the cabin. Max took a small, precise step toward the bag, sniffing the escaping fumes. The dog's body language was disciplined, controlled, deliberate. He wasn't panicking, he was performing a trained assessment. His ears twitched, nostrils flaring. Every subtle movement was a signal, a warning. The girl leaned in, whispering gently, "Max, it's okay. You've got this." Her voice was soft, calming, infused with trust that only came from experience. She had lived through fire, fear, and loss, but now she faced another trial in the confined space of an airplane with her guardian dog at her side. Passengers held their breath. A retired firefighter who had been seated a few rows away finally spoke up. "He's not just any dog, look at him. This is trained, alert behavior. The smoke alone would trigger him, but he's reacting specifically to the bag. He knows something's wrong inside." The pilot's jaw tightened. Rules and protocol screamed for him to maintain control, to have security handle the situation. But he couldn't deny the truth in front of him. Every instinct in him, the kind built over years of flying, of responsibility for passengers' lives, was screaming the same message: trust the dog. Max moved again, nudging the bag with his snout. His teeth barely grazed the fabric, careful, deliberate, testing the weight and contents. Then he sat back, alert, and looked at the little girl as if to say, "I found it. Watch me." The girl's hand tightened around his leash. "Good boy, show them," she whispered. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had faced death and survived, who knew when to act and when to trust instincts over fear. The pilot, realizing he had no choice but to follow the lead of this extraordinary duo, carefully stepped forward, keeping his distance. He glanced around, catching the fearful, astonished faces of passengers. Some held their phones, hesitant to film, unsure if capturing this moment would be historic or horrifying. Others simply stared, frozen by awe and terror. A faint hiss escaped from the bag again, sharper this time. The passengers flinched collectively. The smell was acrid now, subtle but unmistakable. Max's ears twitched, eyes narrowing, muscles tensing imperceptibly. His training, honed over years of disaster response work, had detected the chemical signature of danger that humans could neither see nor smell clearly. The little girl whispered again, almost inaudibly, "Max, don't let them touch it." The flight attendant's eyes widened. "Sir, he's telling us the bag is dangerous. Do not touch it." The pilot froze, realizing the gravity of the situation. Every protocol in the airline manual, every rule he had followed his entire career, was irrelevant. This was no longer about procedure. This was about instinct, about survival, and about trusting a hero on 4 legs. Max barked once, short, firm, commanding attention without panic. The sound reverberated in the cabin, snapping every passenger to awareness. He nudged the bag again, this time lightly pawing at a small pocket. His movements were precise, intentional, like a trained professional signaling a critical discovery. The little girl's eyes widened as she recognized the action. "He's found it, he knows." The pilot stepped back, mouth dry. "Everyone step back," he said, voice trembling slightly. "Do not approach the bag." His hand hovered near the intercom, ready to call emergency personnel once on the ground, but even he knew that immediate action could put lives at risk. Max's gaze shifted from the bag to the pilot, then back to the little girl. The communication between the two was almost human. His stance radiated authority. He had identified a threat. He was ready to neutralize it if needed, and he demanded that humans respect the protocol he understood instinctively. The cabin was thick with tension. The faint hissing from the bag grew slightly louder, curling in small spirals of smoke. The smell, acrid and unsettling, reached the noses of passengers near the aisle. A ripple of fear swept through the cabin. Children clutched their parents' arms. Adults exchanged frantic glances, realizing that the threat was immediate. The little girl whispered again, her voice steady despite the terror in the room. "He'll handle it. He knows what to do." Max barked sharply, then pressed his massive snout against the bag. The hiss grew louder. The passengers gasped. Some took a step back instinctively, while others froze in awe of the dog's control. Max was not panicking, he was working. He was performing an assessment, a search, a prelude to action that could save dozens of lives. The pilot's face paled. He swallowed hard. "Call emergency services on the ground. Now," he barked over the radio, his professional detachment finally overridden by instinctive fear and awe. The flight attendant nodded, pressing the call button to alert ground control, while keeping a careful eye on Max. The passengers were silent, watching history unfold in real time. And then, with an almost imperceptible shift, Max pawed the bag again and it moved, slightly, too slightly for untrained eyes to notice. A faint metallic click echoed from within. The entire cabin froze. The little girl's breath caught in her throat. "He's triggered it," she whispered, eyes wide. Her heart pounded, yet she did not release Max's leash. She trusted him completely. Max barked again, more firmly, more urgently, and stepped back slightly, warning all nearby. The bag's hissing intensified, curling wisps of smoke into the aisle. The passengers recoiled, some instinctively covering their faces. The pilot's knuckles whitened around his clipboard. He looked at the little girl, then at Max. The dog's stance, unwavering and precise, communicated a single, chilling message: "This is serious." And then the bag shifted slightly again, as if responding to the dog's command. A faint chemical odor hit the cabin, a scent sharp, acrid, and unmistakably dangerous. The little girl whispered softly to Max, "Do your thing, it's okay." Max barked once more, firm, precise, and moved decisively toward the aisle. The entire cabin leaned forward in tense anticipation. Every passenger realized the truth simultaneously. This dog was about to save them all. And at that moment, the first sharp pop sounded from inside the bag. The cabin went silent, hearts froze, Max stiffened. The little girl's grip tightened on his leash. Everyone knew whatever was coming next would determine whether they survived the flight. The sharp pop from the black duffel bag echoed like a gunshot through the cabin. Every passenger froze mid-breath. Heartbeats accelerated. The hum of the engines faded into the background as fear gripped the plane like a vice. The smell of chemicals intensified, curling into the aisle and pricking at every passenger's nose. Panic threatened to erupt, but one presence held the room in tense suspension. Max, the German shepherd, unflinching, poised, a living anchor of calm amid the chaos. The little girl gripped Max's leash so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Her eyes were wide, her breath quick, but there was no fear in her expression, only trust. She had survived a fire before, she knew courage, and she knew that Max, her hero and guardian, would act to protect them all. The pilot's face was pale, beads of sweat forming along his hairline. He had spent years mastering control, handling emergencies, and ensuring passenger safety. But nothing had prepared him for this. A small child in her K-9, trained in disaster response, confronting a potentially life-threatening threat mid-flight. His voice, usually authoritative and commanding, wavered. "Everybody stay calm, step back, do not approach the bag." Passengers obeyed, moving slightly toward the aisle, creating space for the dog to act. The tension was suffocating. The hiss from the bag grew louder, sharper, more insistent. Max's ears twitched, his posture tightened. He was ready. The little girl whispered softly, words meant only for Max, "You know what to do, just like before." Max's eyes flicked to hers, acknowledging the command. Then he shifted his weight forward, moving closer to the bag, careful not to disturb it abruptly. He sniffed, analyzed, and with a deliberate paw nudged the bag slightly. A metallic clink echoed again, ominous and threatening. The passengers flinched. "Sir, it's worse than we thought," the flight attendant murmured, leaning toward the pilot. "He's trained to detect explosives. That's why he reacted instantly. We have to trust him." The pilot's jaw clenched. Every protocol screamed that he should wait for trained emergency personnel, that he should not risk the dog, the girl, or the passengers. Yet instinct told him otherwise. He saw the precision in Max's movements, the intelligence, the unwavering calm. This was no ordinary dog. This was a professional, a hero trained for life-and-death scenarios. The little girl's voice was barely audible. "He'll save us, he always does." Max barked, a sharp, commanding bark that cut through the tension like a knife. The sound drew every eye in the cabin toward him. He pawed the bag again, testing it, signaling the urgency to the humans around him. The hissing intensified. Small wisps of smoke began curling from the bag, visible now in the cabin's fluorescent light. A faint chemical odor stung the passengers' noses. The air grew heavy. Panic threatened to overtake calm, but Max remained composed, a perfect balance of vigilance and control. The pilot stepped back instinctively. "Everyone remain seated. Do not move." His voice carried authority, but the tremor betrayed the tension inside him. He glanced at the little girl, then at Max. The dog's posture communicated everything words could not. Danger. Imminent. Act carefully now. Max nudged the bag once more with his snout and then froze. He barked again, low and controlled, and pressed his massive body forward as if shielding the girl. He was signaling the critical moment. Action must happen now, but only precise, deliberate action. The little girl whispered, "Go, Max, show them." Suddenly Max leapt, swift, controlled, precise. His paws landed lightly on the floor, body angled toward the bag. With a single motion, he nudged it off its spot beneath the seat, sliding it gently into the aisle, careful not to tip or jostle it violently. The hiss escaped again, louder, a chemical warning that made everyone flinch. Passengers gasped. Some instinctively moved further back, some froze in awe. The retired firefighter whispered, "He's keeping control, he knows exactly what to do." The little girl leaned forward slightly, hand resting on Max's back. "Good boy, steady, steady." Her voice, calm yet urgent, gave the dog confidence. Max had responded instantly, perfectly trained and perfectly attuned to her. The pilot swallowed hard, realizing the full gravity of the moment. Emergency personnel were still miles away. The chemical odor indicated a potential threat that could escalate in seconds. Every passenger, every crew member depended on the child and her dog. Years of protocol were useless here. Only instinct, training, and courage mattered now. Max sniffed the bag again, nudging it slightly. His body was tense, every muscle coiled like a spring. Then he barked sharply, signaling a final warning. The hiss from the bag intensified, curling into a small column that reached eye level for some passengers. The metallic click came again, ominous, threatening, terrifying. The little girl's eyes met the pilot's. "He'll handle it," she whispered softly. "Trust him." The pilot's pulse raced. He glanced at the cabin, passengers wide-eyed, frozen by fear and awe. He realized the truth. This dog was the only one capable of managing the threat. Not him, not the flight attendants, not the emergency crews waiting below, only Max. Max lunged forward with precision, gripping the corner of the bag gently in his powerful jaws. The hiss became a faint sizzle as the bag shifted. The passengers gasped again, frozen, waiting for the inevitable disaster. The little girl whispered a single word, "Now." Max sprang into action. With a calculated motion, he dragged the bag toward the nearest emergency exit door. The hiss escaped more sharply, curling into the aisle, but Max remained composed. His body shielded the little girl as he positioned the bag near the door, ready for safe disposal. The pilot stepped forward, hands raised to assist, but Max growled softly, warning him to stay clear. Every passenger realized the precision of the operation. The dog was controlling the situation with calculated authority, preventing chaos while protecting lives. A faint crack echoed from the bag and smoke poured from the zipper. Panic threatened to erupt, but Max did not falter. With a final controlled tug, he positioned the bag safely near the exit, keeping his massive body between it and the passengers. The cabin exhaled collectively, tension coiling tighter than ever. The little girl knelt beside him, whispering praise and reassurance. "You did it, good boy." The pilot, pale and trembling, realized the truth. He had witnessed heroism unlike anything in his career. Max, the little girl's guardian, had prevented a catastrophe with perfect composure, intelligence, and courage. But the danger wasn't over. The hiss from the bag continued, faint but persistent, signaling that every second counted. The emergency crews outside needed to act fast, and Max would hold the line until then. A passenger whispered, voice shaking, He saved us all." The little girl nodded, resting her forehead against Max's neck. "He always does," she murmured. The pilot stepped back, eyes wide, his authority replaced by awe. "We need to evacuate," he said, voice low but firm. "Everyone, slowly to the exits." Max's ears twitched. He barked once, sharp, warning, protective, and shifted slightly, blocking the aisle, directing passengers toward safety with subtle movements. Every motion was intentional, every breath measured. And then, as the first passengers reached the exit door, the metallic click inside the bag sounded again, louder this time. The cabin froze. The hiss became a slight pop. The potential for disaster was real and imminent. Max's eyes flicked to the little girl. She nodded, small but resolute. He understood. The seconds stretched into eternity. The passengers waited, hearts pounding, watching a dog and a child control fate with courage, intelligence, and precision. And then, at the exact moment the first emergency personnel arrived on the tarmac outside, Max barked a final warning, a signal that only the trained and attentive would recognize. Something inside the bag shifted violently. Smoke spiraled higher. The cabin held its collective breath. Every eye locked on Max. Every passenger waited for the hero to act. The first emergency crew member opened the plane door. The first emergency personnel had finally reached the plane's open door, their faces grim, radios crackling with urgent commands. But inside, the tension was almost unbearable. Every passenger, frozen in place, watched as the little girl knelt beside Max, whispering words of trust and courage that only he could hear. The German Shepherd's massive body tensed, ready, muscles coiled like springs, a living shield between danger and the innocent. The hiss from the duffel bag at the back of the cabin grew sharper, curling into the aisle. The metallic clicks echoed with increasing urgency. Every instinct in the passengers screamed at them to run, but there was nowhere to go. Confined in the narrow cabin of a plane hurtling through the sky, every second mattered. Max barked sharply, a single commanding bark that reverberated through the aisle. The sound was precise, authoritative, and meant one thing: attention, danger, step back. The passengers flinched, instinctively obeying the signal. The pilot's knuckles whitened around the railing as he watched the dog's movements, realizing that the animal had total control of the situation. The little girl whispered softly, "Go, Max, do your thing. You know what to do." With those words, Max lunged forward, agile despite his size. His paws slid across the floor with perfect precision as he gripped the corner of the duffel bag in his powerful jaws. The hiss grew louder, and the faint smell of chemicals wafted toward the front of the cabin. Every passenger froze. The retired firefighter seated near the middle of the plane muttered under his breath, "He knows exactly what he's doing. That dog's a trained professional. Trust him." Max didn't falter. He tugged the bag gently toward the aisle, dragging it away from passengers' legs. The hiss intensified, curling smoke higher, but the dog's disciplined movements never wavered. He stopped, shifted, nudged the bag again, then barked sharply, signaling the pilot and flight attendants to clear the remaining space. The pilot, voice tight with tension, instructed, "Move back. Give him room." Passengers obeyed, shuffling carefully toward the rear exit. The little girl stayed beside Max, whispering praise, her tiny hands lightly brushing his fur. "Good boy, steady, steady." Max's ears twitched. He sniffed, analyzed, and adjusted his stance, positioning the bag precisely where it could do the least harm, away from passengers and critical areas of the plane. The hiss became a sharp sizzle, and a faint chemical odor burned the back of noses. Every second counted. Then, without warning, the duffel bag shifted violently, its contents reacting to some internal mechanism. Smoke spiraled higher, curling toward the ceiling. Panic threatened to erupt, but Max remained focused, unflinching. He barked again, sharp and commanding, warning everyone to stay back. The pilot swallowed hard, realizing that any sudden move by humans could trigger disaster. His mind raced. Every emergency protocol he had ever learned suddenly seemed insufficient. He glanced at the little girl, her eyes steady, calm, filled with trust. She was small, but her courage dwarfed them all. And beside her, Max acted with the precision and focus of a true hero. Max nudged the bag once more, then barked sharply and stepped back slightly. He had done everything possible to mitigate the immediate risk, but the threat was not neutralized. The hiss continued, sharp and insistent. The little girl whispered softly, almost as if speaking to herself, "It's okay, you've got this." Max barked again and pawed the bag lightly, his massive head tilting slightly, assessing, analyzing. He understood the danger better than any human in the cabin. The chemical smell was acrid, unfamiliar, volatile. One wrong move could trigger an explosion or a release of toxic fumes. Every passenger sensed it. The air grew thick, tense, electrified with fear. A flight attendant whispered to the pilot, voice trembling, "Sir, he's signaling that the bag needs to be removed immediately. We can't touch it. Only he can handle it." The pilot's hands tightened on the railing. He looked at Max, then at the little girl. He understood. There was no choice but to trust them. Suddenly, the bag emitted another metallic click, followed by a sharper hiss. Smoke spiraled faster, curling like a warning. The passengers flinched instinctively. The little girl whispered, "Max now." Max lunged. His powerful jaws gripped the duffel bag with precision, careful not to jostle it violently. He dragged it through the narrow aisle with practiced efficiency. His massive paws clicked against the cabin floor, deliberate and steady. Passengers moved aside instinctively, following the signals of a dog whose focus and training were absolute. The retired firefighter whispered again, awestruck, "That dog is unbelievable. He's saving all their lives right now." The hiss from the bag intensified. Smoke curled higher, and a faint sizzling sound accompanied it. The metallic mechanism inside was unstable, but Max remained composed, dragging the duffel toward the nearest exit. The little girl clung to his leash, whispering encouragement. "Good boy, careful, careful." Her voice carried determination born of survival and trust. She had lived through fire before. She knew courage, and she knew Max was her protector. Passengers followed, awestruck, as Max maneuvered the bag precisely to the emergency door. The pilot stepped aside, breathing hard, overwhelmed by awe. He realized that every second counted. The bag was a potential disaster, and only Max's trained precision had prevented catastrophe so far. Max nudged the bag one final time, positioning it squarely by the exit. The hiss grew louder, curling upward. Smoke filled the aisle. The passengers gasped, covering their faces. The little girl whispered, "Good boy, stay steady." Max barked sharply, signaling the pilot to open the door. The roar of the outside air met them, mingling with the hiss and smoke. The emergency crew outside shouted, ready to intervene. The duffel bag, now fully visible to trained eyes, emitted a final metallic click that made the cabin flinch. The little girl whispered, almost reverently, "You did it, you always do." Max stayed alert, guarding the bag, ears forward, eyes scanning for any sudden movement. He had bought every second he could. Every passenger understood the gravity of the moment. They were alive because of a dog and a child, two heroes who defied rules, fear, and expectation. The pilot's voice trembled slightly as he spoke into the intercom. "Emergency crews, proceed. Evacuate the plane if necessary. All passengers stay calm." Max's gaze flicked between the little girl and the duffel bag. He understood that the threat wasn't neutralized yet. The hiss continued, faint but insistent, and the metallic clicks hinted at remaining danger. But he remained poised, confident in his training and instincts. Then the first emergency crew member reached the threshold of the plane door. Max barked one final warning, low and commanding. The hiss from the bag intensified, curling upward, smoke spiraling into the cabin. The metallic mechanism inside clicked once more, a signal that time was running out. The little girl whispered softly, her voice steady but urgent. "Now, Max, do what you must." The German shepherd's eyes locked on the bag, muscles coiled, teeth ready. The cabin held its collective breath. Every passenger, every crew member, every adult and child in that plane knew one thing. Max was about to act, and whatever happened next would determine their fate. And then, with precision honed through years of training and experience, Max lunged at the bag. Max's powerful body coiled like a spring, muscles taut under his sleek coat. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, precise. The hiss from the duffel bag swirled through the cabin, curling like ghostly fingers, carrying the acrid stench of danger. Passengers clutched each other, frozen by fear, their wide eyes locked on the German shepherd. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a child and her dog confronting imminent disaster, and now the moment of reckoning had arrived. The little girl knelt beside Max, whispering in his ear, "You've got this, just like before. Steady, steady." Her voice was calm, yet filled with steel, a blend of trust and command. She had lived through fire before. She had survived death and emerged braver than most adults. And now she relied entirely on Max, her guardian, her hero. Max lunged forward, his powerful jaws gripping the corner of the duffel bag. The hiss escalated, curling into the aisle in thick, acrid waves. Smoke stung the eyes of passengers, burning the back of their throats. Yet Max remained focused, undeterred, a guardian in the narrow confines of the plane. The pilot took a cautious step back, heart hammering. Years of experience, protocols, and emergency drills offered no guidance for this. He realized finally that all the rules in the world could not replace instinct, training, and courage. And he understood one thing clearly: this dog was the authority now. Max barked sharply, low and commanding. His eyes flicked toward the emergency exit, then back to the bag, signaling the pilot and crew to step aside. Every movement was precise, every action purposeful. The passengers instinctively obeyed, creating a clear path, their fear mingling with awe. The duffel bag hissed violently, smoke spiraling like a miniature storm. The metallic clicks inside accelerated, alarming everyone. Panic threatened to erupt, but Max's presence kept the chaos in check. He pawed the bag lightly, testing its stability, then adjusted his grip, moving it inch by inch toward the emergency exit. The little girl whispered, "Careful, careful, you've got this." Her small hands rested lightly on Max's back, offering comfort and encouragement. There was a quiet bond, almost telepathic, between them, a shared understanding born of survival and trust. The pilot's voice trembled as he spoke over the intercom. "All passengers remain calm. Keep your distance. Emergency crews are at the door." His eyes never left Max, aware that the dog's precision was the only thing preventing catastrophe. Max's movements were deliberate. He adjusted the bag's position again, nudging it slightly to align it with the open emergency door. Smoke curled higher, acrid and thick. The hiss grew sharper, more insistent, a warning that time was running out. The little girl whispered again, "Now, Max, push it out." Max barked once, a sharp, commanding bark that cut through the tension like a blade. Then, with a surge of controlled power, he lunged, dragging the duffel bag toward the door. His paws clicked against the cabin floor, steady, unyielding. Every passenger recoiled instinctively, some pressing against the aisle walls, others clutching each other in silent prayer. The hiss intensified, curling higher, reaching the top of the cabin. Smoke filled the air, making the metallic interior shimmer in a haze of tension. Max did not falter. He nudged the bag again, pushing it closer to the threshold of the open door. The little girl whispered almost reverently, "Good boy, steady, steady, almost there." Emergency personnel outside shouted instructions, ready to intercept the bag. Max barked sharply, low and commanding, signaling them to wait, to coordinate, to respect the delicate balance between danger and action. Then the metallic mechanism inside the bag clicked violently, the hiss spiking, smoke curling thicker into the cabin. Passengers gasped, some instinctively covering their faces. The threat was real. The danger was immediate. The duffel bag could explode or release toxic fumes with a single misstep. Max stiffened. His eyes narrowed, muscles rippling under his coat. He adjusted his stance, bracing himself, gripping the bag with precision. He was the only barrier between the threat and dozens of lives. The little girl whispered softly, "You've got this, Max. Push it out now." With perfect timing, Max lunged again, dragging the duffel bag through the threshold of the emergency door. The hiss and smoke followed, curling outward, into the open air where it posed no further danger. The cabin exhaled collectively, a silent wave of relief that mingled with lingering fear. Passengers stared, mouths agape, unable to comprehend the scale of what they had just witnessed. A small child and a dog had confronted imminent disaster mid-flight and had prevented catastrophe with courage, precision, and trust. The little girl's eyes shone as she whispered, "We did it, you did it." She wrapped her arms around Max's massive neck, hugging him tightly. Max, still alert, allowed the brief moment of relief, tail wagging slightly, but his eyes never left the cabin, ever vigilant. The pilot, pale and trembling, stepped forward. I've never seen anything like this," he said, voice filled with awe. "That dog and that little girl, they saved this plane." A flight attendant knelt beside the girl, brushing smoke from her hair. "You're brave," she said softly. "And so is he. You saved everyone." The retired firefighter muttered, voice hushed with reverence. "He's a hero. Both of them are heroes. I've never seen anything like this in all my years." Max finally relaxed slightly, allowing the little girl to hug him fully. But his ears twitched, nostrils flaring faintly. Danger may have passed for now, but he remained a guardian, vigilant, aware, ready for any further threat. The cabin erupted into quiet applause, some passengers shedding tears, others embracing those nearby. Phones were raised, capturing history. A heroic German shepherd, guided by a courageous little girl, saving the lives of dozens mid-flight. The pilot spoke again, voice steady now but full of emotion. "Emergency personnel will handle the bag now. Everyone, stay calm and seated." Outside, emergency crews approached the duffel bag carefully, equipped with protective gear and specialized tools. Max watched, ensuring the bag remained stable and the cabin safe. The little girl whispered once more, "Good boy, thank you." Passengers whispered among themselves, voices trembling with awe and relief. "I can't believe a dog did that. And that little girl, she's incredible. They saved all our lives." The pilot looked at Max and the girl, finally acknowledging what everyone in the cabin had realized. The rules, regulations, and authority of adults mattered little compared to courage, instinct, and training. A child and a dog had taken control, and their bravery had saved lives. But even in the midst of relief, the cabin held a quiet tension. Emergency crews were still handling the bag. The hiss had ceased, but smoke lingered, acrid and unsettling. Every passenger understood that danger had only been neutralized through precision and trust. The little girl's arms rested on Max's broad back, her face pale but resolute. And then, just as a wave of relief began to wash over the cabin, a subtle, almost imperceptible noise echoed from the bag, another metallic click, faint but unmistakable. Passengers froze once more, the pilot's face drained of color. Max stiffened, ears forward, muscles taut. The little girl's eyes widened slightly, her grip tightening on his leash. Something inside the bag was not yet fully neutralized. The cabin, once relieved, now felt the creeping edge of suspense. Max growled low, a deep, controlled warning. Every passenger knew instinctively the danger was not over. The clock was ticking. And at that moment, a faint pop echoed from the cabin floor, not from the bag, but from the luggage compartment under the seats, a subtle reminder that danger could lurk in more places than one. The cabin fell silent, every heartbeat suspended, every eye on the child and her guardian dog. The faint pop beneath the seats made every passenger freeze again. Max stiffened, ears forward, nostrils flaring. The little girl's grip on his leash tightened, her wide eyes reflecting the fear and determination that had carried them through every crisis. Smoke from the duffel bag still lingered in the cabin, curling in ghostly wisps around terrified, awestruck passengers. The hiss had subsided from the main bag outside, but danger was far from over. The pilot, voice tense but measured, instructed, "Stay calm. Everyone remain seated. Keep away from the aisles. We have emergency personnel outside. Do not panic." He took a cautious step toward the luggage compartment beneath the rear seats, but Max growled, a low, commanding warning that froze him instantly. Every passenger understood instinctively that Max had detected something hidden, something the humans could not yet see. The little girl whispered softly, almost to herself, "Max, show them." Her hands rested on his back, offering reassurance and trust. She had survived flames and fear before. Now she faced the unknown on a flying machine, and her hero, her guardian, was beside her. Max shifted slightly, pawing the floor, his gaze locked on a subtle bulge beneath the seat. His body was a taut spring of power and precision. Every movement was deliberate, every muscle coiled and ready. He barked once, a sharp, commanding bark that cut through the cabin's tension, signaling the pilot to keep his distance. The pilot nodded slowly, finally understanding that the dog was in full control of the situation. "Emergency teams, wait for his signal," he muttered into his headset, voice edged with awe. Passengers watched in stunned silence as Max began his assessment. He sniffed the area carefully, nudging the floor lightly with his nose, tail rigid, ears forward. Then he barked again, a single, deliberate bark that drew every eye toward him. The little girl whispered, "Good boy, steady, you've got this." Max's movements were precise. He nudged the bulge gently with his paw, then pressed his snout against it, testing the weight and contents. The hiss was faint, a subtle warning of chemical residue, but Max remained calm, disciplined, and ready. The pilot held his breath, realizing this was beyond any protocol he had ever known. Every passenger held theirs, captivated by the extraordinary display of courage, trust, and instinct. Then Max acted. With controlled precision, he shifted his weight, gripping the hidden package gently with his jaws. He pulled it slowly, carefully, sliding it into the aisle where the little girl knelt beside him, whispering encouragement. The hiss grew sharper, smoke curling upward, acrid and stinging. Passengers instinctively recoiled, some pressing against the walls, others covering their faces. Yet Max never faltered. His every move was deliberate, calculated, and heroic. Emergency personnel outside readied protective gear. The pilot stepped back, awestruck, finally allowing Max to direct the operation. "Do not touch it. Let him handle it," he called out. Max lunged gently, dragging the package toward the rear emergency door. Every motion was precise, controlled, purposeful. Smoke billowed faintly, but the dog remained unshaken. His focus was absolute. The little girl whispered, "Almost there. Good boy, steady." Her small hands brushed his fur in silent praise, a bond forged through survival, courage, and trust. Passengers watched as Max positioned the hidden package at the threshold of the emergency door. The hiss curled outward, and smoke spiraled into the open air. The metallic mechanism clicked faintly, signaling the remaining danger. The retired firefighter whispered, awestruck, "I've never seen anything like this, a dog saving dozens of lives mid-flight. Incredible." The pilot nodded, voice hushed but firm. "Everyone stay calm. Emergency crews will handle the rest. The threat is contained." Max barked once, sharp, commanding, protective, then released the package carefully, ensuring it was stable. Smoke drifted outward, dissipating into the open air. The little girl hugged him tightly, her relief palpable. "You did it, you always do." The passengers erupted into applause, some crying, others hugging loved ones. Phones captured every moment, history in motion. They had witnessed courage in its purest form, a child's trust and a dog's heroism saving dozens of lives mid-flight. Emergency crews approached the package, now safely outside the plane. Max remained alert, guarding the aisle, his eyes sweeping the cabin, ensuring no further threat remained. The little girl patted his massive head. "Good boy, thank you." The pilot exhaled, finally letting his tension dissipate. "I've flown thousands of hours, faced storms, emergencies, failures, but I've never seen bravery like this. Never." The passengers murmured their awe, voices trembling. "Unbelievable, a child and a dog. They saved us all, heroic." Outside, emergency personnel examined the duffel bag. Smoke cleared. The metallic mechanism inside had been a failed incendiary device, deactivated by Max's controlled movements and the quick coordination of the crew. The plane was safe. Lives were saved. Catastrophe had been averted. Back inside, the little girl hugged Max again. He leaned into her, eyes bright, tail wagging slightly, but his posture remained vigilant. They had faced danger together, and they had won. The pilot knelt beside the little girl and Max. "You both saved everyone," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I can't thank you enough, you're heroes." The little girl shook her head, a small, shy smile breaking through. We just did what we had to do." Her words were simple, yet profound. She had faced fear, and with her loyal companion she had saved lives. Max barked softly, a low, satisfied sound, as if acknowledging the praise but reminding everyone that vigilance never truly ends. He had protected them all, but he remained ready, alert, a guardian of life. Passengers slowly rose, applauding, hugging, crying, overwhelmed by the extraordinary events. Social media phones buzzed, capturing every moment, ready to share the story of courage that no one would ever forget. The pilot adjusted his headset, voice steady. "Flight will continue safely. We owe our lives to a very special team. Remember this day, remember them." As the plane leveled off, the little girl leaned against Max, exhausted but triumphant. Her tiny hand rested on his fur. "We did it together." Max's eyes scanned the cabin one final time, taking in every passenger. Calm, vigilant, proud, guardian, hero, friend. And outside the windows, the sun broke through clouds, casting a golden glow over the plain. It was more than light. It was hope, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a little girl and her extraordinary dog. The story would travel far beyond the confines of that aircraft. News crews, social media, and headlines would herald the bravery of the K9 German Shepherd and the little girl who trusted him completely. The world would marvel at courage, at trust, at instinct, at the pure heroism of two souls who refused to cower in the face of danger. And as the plane touched down safely at its destination, passengers would disembark slowly, some still shaken, some still tearful, all forever changed. The little girl whispered softly to Max as they stepped onto solid ground. "We did it. Everyone's safe because of you." Max nuzzled her gently, eyes bright, tail wagging. In that moment, no words were necessary. The bond, the courage, the life-saving heroism, they were unspoken, unbreakable, eternal. The plane's doors closed. Emergency crews secured the area. The sun glinted off Max's coat, highlighting the courage and heroism that had just saved dozens of lives. A child, a dog, a flight, and a story that would live forever. And as they walked away from the aircraft together, the world outside unaware of the near tragedy inside, one truth remained clear: bravery does not come in size. Heroism does not wear a uniform. Courage lives in hearts willing to act, and sometimes it comes on four legs. The little girl looked up at Max and whispered, "Thank you for everything." Max barked once, a gentle, triumphant sound, a hero's bark. And the world, though it didn't know it yet, would never forget.